And welcome everybody to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm Megan Harless, your host like always, and we have an exciting show for you today. We're going to be talking about what you need to know in regards to selling our homes. Before we get to that, I just want to give a reminder to everybody that everyone is coming down on their orders. If you don't already have them, they should be issued the next couple of weeks. So as soon as you get them, just a reminder, get on DPS, get your account created, and go ahead and get your move set up. You need to do that, get your move in line, so once they start booking for the summer cycle, that you can get your move booked accordingly as well. Additionally, there's also been a little glitch in the system as well. So DPS has been sending folks emails about if your claim's settled, you need to reach out to your TSP and get your check for your claim and everything. And a lot of folks that are receiving that are like at the beginning of their claim or haven't filed their claim yet. They realize it is a glitch. They are addressing it. So if you get that email and you're just like, we haven't started our claim, what's going on? Just ignore it. But they're working through that piece. So we're going to dive right into today. We're going to be talking about, as I said, selling our home, all of those things that you need to know in regards to selling your home that you may not think of before. So I want to welcome to the show today. I'm going to try to do this right. Jacinthe Pear.
Yes, Paris, it's good enough. Yes.
Thank you for joining us today. If you could take a moment and tell us about yourself.
Thank you. So, yes, Jacinthe Paris, I'm French Canadian. Originally, I've been living in the United States since 1994 when I moved to Virginia Beach at the time and lived there for over 27 years. Beautiful place, raised two beautiful children there. And then as they were ready for college, we decided to make the move to the West Coast and wanted to pursue that dream of ours. There were some great opportunities here, and we've been living here for almost 2 years now. So talk about relocating in the middle of COVID. We went through that. So that's a different story, but that's a little bit more about myself. And then my husband is a retired Navy SEAL. He was in service for almost 27 years. So he was deployed and sent throughout the world multiple times. And, my background comes in marketing and sales. Originally, I did a lot of that over the years and focusing on a lot of travel destination and had a lot of personal interest in real estate since the early stage. So I kind of commingled those two careers, but I've been doing it now full time since we moved here on the West Coast almost 2 years ago.
How exciting. I always love hearing about like the beach life and living. We lived near the coast an hour away for a couple of years. And it was one of my favorite times because it was just like a Saturday morning. We wake up and it's just like, oh, let's just go to the beach and being able to enjoy that lifestyle some. So the first step when it comes to selling your home should be finding a good real estate agent. Can you tell us some about like what makes a good agent stick out? Is it okay to talk to multiple folks? And at what point during the process does it become like the point of no return when working with an agent?
Mm-hmm. I think you should. I think you should definitely talk to at least maybe 2 or 3 different agents. I think there's a chemistry there and expertise that is needed, and you got to find a good fit because it's such an emotional process. You already have to deal with the move that's coming up. Most of the time, children involved. You want to have someone who is incredibly knowledgeable about the industry, but is also able at displaying empathy and understanding the whole process, so you can hold their hand a little bit and reassure them because there will be about 6 or 7 different phases in the whole selling cycle or buying cycle that are very emotional, and they're normal. So I would always recommend talk to a couple of people and then make a decision. And there are different questions that I think you should ask them, and we'll go over that I think in a little bit. But just you have to feel very comfortable with that person that you trust and is knowledgeable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that empathy piece plays a big part to it because being a military family, sometimes the agent we may be talking to doesn't understand some of our lifestyle and what goes through it. And so being able to talk and have those conversations can definitely make a big difference in whether you choose them or someone else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a part that's often missed. People look at, okay, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've got all this experience, and they have all their stats, and it's all nice and good. And I think it's important. But I think, again, that human connection, I think, is equally important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if a family knows that they will be moving this summer, when should they look at putting their house on the market? And is there such a thing as listing too early in the season?
Mhm. Well, I mean, obviously it depends of what cycle we're in right now. Seller's
Mhm.
market, so everything sells so quickly still in most parts of the country. So if it were 7 years ago, I would have a different answer. But right now, I think, if you're going to be moving in July, you want to start, there's a couple of phases. You want to start getting the house ready as soon as possible, because depending on how long you've been living in there, it may take more time than, it may take a little bit of time to kind of declutter and get it ready. So right now, what we're seeing, depending on the market, and that's a great conversation to have with your realtor, is looking at what the stats say. Right now, here in San Diego, most houses go on the market on Thursday. We are back doing open houses. A good realtor would do that, and then by Monday or Tuesday, you have multiple offers. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how quickly it goes. So I think, there's more time needed to get the house ready than selling it right now. So if you're leaving in July, no later probably than the spring, you want to put it on the market. And then there are little tricks that you can do to negotiate maybe a rent back, because there's that sweet spot window in the spring when people are all out there, and whether they're military or not, they might get like a person who's a civilian who's interested in your house. So you don't want to wait too long.
Mhm.
And a lot of time people are looking, they want to be completely settled into the new school year system. So I would say in the spring is a good time to put it out there.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder for me. So like I know we're moving this summer and know the location, and we've been starting to look, and I have been getting a little disappointed at the houses I have found
Mm-hmm.
that are on the market. And a couple of my friends have to keep reminding me, like, Megan, like it's the end of February, like people aren't listing yet. Like give it a month and like chill
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
you'll
that's a
see it come March, April. You should see a significant increase
mhm.
in the inventory, even though the inventory is way lower than normal right now.
Yeah, and everything. So that's a good reminder for just myself too. Like it's,
Mm-hmm.
spring season and we're not quite there yet. So I should just relax in my home search.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to selling our home, we usually think of, the listing price and what our profit's going to be. And like that's usually it when we think in terms of money as a seller. But what other costs or financial points should a seller be aware of going through this process?
That's a good question. I mean, you obviously had some minimal cost that you might want to invest that might make sense in your house and getting it ready again. There are some things that are so inexpensive that will make such a difference in first impression of the property to get as many people through the door. And we'll talk about that in a second. But so there are some fees related to getting the house ready. And then when you do go into the closing phase, the main number that people look at is the commission for the realtor. There are also some other minimal costs that are involved with the escrow. Sometimes like paying up to the tax, depending on the time of the year, can cut up in that. So you can easily incur another $5,000 or $6,000, during the escrow, depending on the value of the property. So those are all little numbers that kind of start adding up. So as you go through the process, it's important to ask your realtor and your lender to provide you with the seller net sheet, so you can kind of get an estimate of, based on the commission you've agreed to do an offer to your realtor, what should be, how much should you be netting at the end of the day
Mhm.
on the sale, so that way you can kind of manage your expectation. But I think up front, again, when you pick your realtor, it's good to do a walkthrough and then kind of do a little assessment of what would be simple things to do. And you may decide to invest like $2,000 in fresh paint and flowers and things like that. But those are some upfront costs that should be factored into it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mhm.
And Vanessa here commenting, I know Vanessa's located in DC, telling me to relax and to calm down. They're not listing until the first week of April, their house that they're
Mhm.
selling. Um,
Absolutely. So you'll be
I've
good.
just, I get eager because as a military family, like finding a house is like so important. So we can try to set up the door-to-door move, so we can have a place to forward our mail to, so we can be able to get the kids, that transition a little easier.
Mhm.
But it's been a couple years since our last PCS, and so I have to remember, like, stuff isn't happening yet. Like people are still getting their orders, those decisions for listing or
Absolutely.
renting and everything, like they haven't been made yet. And so
Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
just need to relax and finish cleaning my house is really what needs to happen.
Absolutely. Take it out on the house organization right now.
Yes. So speaking of cleaning our homes, like again, coming time to sell it, it's the cleaning it, the decluttering, the staging it. But there are other times, where we might need to do a little more to that. We want to try to get a little more above the asking price, or to make the house stand out a little bit more amongst the other houses listed in the neighborhood. So what are some upgrades or renovations or just maintenance items in general that are worth the money and putting into the home when it comes time to sell it?
The good news is that a lot of those things are simple things that the owner can maybe do themselves. And I mean, they're just like the very simple, basic things. As far as like the outside of the house is so important, because people drive by and it's the first impression. So again, a gallon of paint goes such a long way. So I think, having fresh and clean, I think is important. So just like touching up the paint, with the shutters, adding some colors, clearing all the beds with fresh flowers and potted plants. You have a mailbox. I remember when we left Virginia Beach, just like a nice, fresh, new little cover on the mailbox, and the front door is so important. I mean, it's the entrance to your home. So you want to have a beautiful door, fresh paint on it again, and let's eliminate all the little traces of our four-legged friends, the little dogs and cats. we adore them, but when it's time to sell the house, we want to kind of camouflage that a little bit. So, the outside of the house sometimes might be a little bit more of an investment, but it could go a long way. Again, it's the first impression, and paint is very inexpensive. So the same thing kind of applies for the inside. You want to declutter. You want to just really declutter. A lot of people say you have to put away every single picture frame of your family. And I mean, it depends on the opinion. I don't think it hurts to have one or two, because it creates a soul in the house and it makes it a home. So, but you definitely want to leave room for the new buyer to see themselves in it. So when we left Virginia Beach, we had been living in there for years. So it took me months to declutter. I kind of took a year, which is crazier than average. But like, because there was some emotions attached to it, so it was hard to part from some elements, but needed. So there are things you will take with you, just put it in storage. So you want to eliminate as much clutter. And it's simple things like, that blender that's on the counter that you may never use, just put it away. Just clear the space. Neutral colors is very, very important. We may like that bright red in the bathroom, but most people will not. And you see it when you start looking online, because 80% of the search starts online. We all go through the Zillows and the Redfins and all that, and start looking at properties, or you go through your realtor's website, hopefully. And, these different colors, they kind of like turn you off a little bit, because it may not be your color palette. So some good old neutral colors there, I think will go a long way as well. But those are simple things. And then what they pay a lot of attention to is the kitchen, the good old kitchen. That's where we're going to be spending so much time cooking with our families. So some simple little additions that you might be able to do with your friends over a weekend. But the backsplash, making sure your cabinets, maybe, sometimes you want to paint them and just sand them properly. And there's so many great videos now on YouTube that you can look at. Adding little knobs on the doors goes a long way, and it dresses up your whole kitchen. So those are all really simple little things to do. When you get to the flooring and backsplash, you might need a little bit more expertise, but that also is a pretty minimal investment that you can do to your property to add value. Then they look most of the time at the master bathroom. That's one area where people spend a lot of time looking at that master bedroom, master bathroom. And again, similar things with the color palette, the backsplash, and things like that. When you get into the shower tub and all that, that's a little bit, you might need a contractor to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And you don't start converting a garage into an ADU and building decks and that kind of stuff. You don't typically get your money back from that.
So it's mostly, if you're going to invest your money, invest it on the outside appearance and then the inside of it as well. Don't worry about the depth and the extra add-ons and things like that.
Exactly. I think work with what you have and make it as neutral and clean and updated as possible. And, people come in and a lot of buyers, they like to put their own little personal touch. So to see a little bit of wiggle room there, but they want to make it look crisp and new. And I think that's what most people are looking for.
And when we talk about a neutral palette, it doesn't have to be like stark white walls. Like you can go with like the grays, I think, are the in thing right now, different shades of grays or creams, so you can still have that.
Absolutely. there's a gray that's really popular right now with white trim that makes it look nice and crisp, or again the beige colors.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are very neutral, and you can't go wrong with that. I never go into a house and people say, "Oh, the walls are all uniform and kind of clean." I never have that issue. But if we walk in there and there's a turquoise, I get comments about that.
We've had some rental homes that have had in the bedroom some. One was like a Cinderella blue.
Mm-hmm.
Was like one which my daughter, she loved. She was just like, we can make this my princess room, and I was just like, okay, like it works. But if you have your kids' rooms painted those bright pinks or greens or the royal blues, like those should probably be painted over
I
to a
would
more
recommend
neutral
doing that.
tone.
I think the
Yeah.
kids' room, they get away with it a little bit more because they see that it was a child that was in there and that kind of thing. So I would ask the opinion of your realtor. But again, like there's one that's like an agreeable gray. I think right now is the one that
Mhm.
most houses use, and it kind of goes towards beige or gray depending on what other accent colors you put around it. So that's a good one, to put on
Yeah.
your walls.
So
Mhm.
I wanted to ask this question too, in terms of home and where to get your money worth. Sometimes there's always the debate of like, I know this carpet needs to be replaced, but at some point in time, me and my spouse thought about putting hardwood floors down and just like continuing the hardwood floors. Where do you kind of draw that line of, you should replace the carpet because it needs to be replaced to sell, or should you just leave it in case your buyers want to tear it out like you thought at one point to put hardwood floors down?
Mhm. I think it depends of the condition of the carpet. If
Mhm.
it's really run down, I always recommend putting a fresh carpet there because it's obviously less expensive than putting hardwood floors, or the hardy
Mhm.
planks are very popular right now and easy to take good care of. So when we can say in the description fresh carpet, it always helps to sell. Again,
Mhm.
it looks better, smells better, and all these things. So I think it depends. If your carpet is 1 year old, just a really good cleaning I think will do and will work fine. So, but again, if it's pretty run down, I would recommend investing in it. And there's some products that are pretty affordable out there. It's probably the least expensive way of replacing a room or staircase and things like that, and it will go a long way again.
Okay. That's good advice, because I know
Mhm.
that's always a hard, I think, debate with couples sometimes is, do we replace it, but what if they want to do the hardwood floors and that's just money wasted, and
That's why you don't, yeah, you don't put
but
the
it
most expensive carpet there. And you can always
yeah.
try again if it's just a couple of years old, a good cleaning with
Mhm.
enzymes, that, neutralizes odors and things like that. So it may come out looking really nice and be okay.
Is it worth it to get your home like professional? Like if you're selling it and like we're staging it, is it worth like to hire a company to come in and do like a professional cleaning before a showing, or is it just like our normal wipe down and declutter okay for those types of
You
things?
wanna do like a good spring cleaning. You
Okay.
wanna make sure your blinds are clean, your windows
Mhm.
are clean, the countertops, everything is decluttered, obviously. Just think about if you walk into the house, just
Mhm.
put yourself in the shoes of the buyer and you see any areas, like especially with dogs, we have the dog little cat flap, going in and out that needs to be very immaculate. People just get turned off a little bit when the house is not really clean. So I think it's very, if you do it yourself, very deep spring cleaning, and then the staging goes a long way sometimes. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be like reinvented from beginning until end. A good stager will come in. You're still living in the house, so that's a real situation that we have to
Mhm.
deal with. And they may just add a couple of accent things or just reorganize your own furniture in your own bedroom. It's unbelievable how they can make it look more inviting. Living room situation. I've seen places where people had beautiful French doors, but they had a couch right in front of it, and you can even open the doors. But just moving things around opens up the entire room. So I think that is totally worth the investment, and it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've heard a lot over the past year, especially with COVID, about various contingencies that get written into
Mhm.
the offers. So what are some of the contingencies that are considered normal with an offer versus those kind that maybe a seller should kind of steer clear of?
Mhm. We've seen all kinds of things. I mean, like there are three main contingencies that we work with when you're trying to sell your house. So it's the home inspection is the first one. I would recommend never waiving that. I think you need to know what you're getting into, and I think it's unreasonable to ask for that when you're the seller. That's my personal opinion. So, and then you have obviously if you're not, there's a lot of cash offers out there right now that we're dealing with. So those don't have the appraisal contingency and the loan contingency, which are the other two. So I think, what we see a lot right now, because the inventory is so low and it's such a tricky situation of, yes, when do I put my house on the market? You're very likely to sell it way faster than you're going to find your next property. So a lot of people are uncomfortable. What if I don't have anything or anywhere to stay in between? So we see a lot of people asking for a rent back when you're the seller. They ask for like a 30-day rent back. That is often complimentary. You can get away with that because it's a seller's market. So you can ask a free rent back of up to 30 days. I've seen 45 days. When you get into 60 days, I think it's a little long. People want to be able to kind of move in. So that is something that is totally reasonable and acceptable right now that sellers will offer and usually offer that flexibility.
Yeah, the rent back one is one I've heard a lot of people talk about, that, closing either happened a little bit before or after, and they said, can we rent back because we're, military family, our moving truck is scheduled to come this day, and I've seen a lot of that be accommodated. So it's good to hear that that's kind of a
just went
good
through that
normal
with
thing.
a military family. They're relocating to Florida, and my buyers, they're retired, so they had some flexibility, but they closed early, so that way it's peace of mind. But then they become the landlord for the next 25 days, which is what they needed. So that's very typical right now.
Yeah. So sometimes there is a debate between a family making the decision to sell their home or to rent it out and become landlords or hire a property management company. What are some things that a family should consider in this debate to help make their decision to either sell or rent?
Oh, that is such a hard one. Well, first of all, your current home right now, is it in a location that you absolutely love? And are you ever thinking about going back there? If you're thinking you have 4 more years and then you're going to retire and want to go back to that destination and would want to live in that house again, yeah, I think renting becomes something very interesting, especially if you have some equity in the property and then you had locked in these great interest rates. So that is something to think about. I think you have to really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, how much stress tolerance do I have? Because when you're deployed across the country or around the world, you've got that piece of property there. You may have a property manager, which I think is a smart idea to do, and have someone to help you there. But sometimes people decide to do it themselves because they know a lot of people in that market. They had a really good crew there that they can rely on. If something breaks down and they have a quick turnaround, or they know the person who wants to rent is a friend of theirs and they've known them for 20 years and they totally trust the person. That makes sense. That could be something that's really worth considering, because properties have increased so much in a year or two, your equity kind of goes up on the property. So those are big questions that you have to ask yourself. But I would start with, like, am I able to handle the stress being away? Because if you sell, you walk away headache free. If you decide to continue, then you're always tied in that property. So some brain cells, and brain space that you need to allocate to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just a comment here. So it's showing up as Facebook user, but it's coming from our group, and it's Julie Shepard saying that they've rented out and have self-managed, and that has worked well for them. I know it's one of the things that me and my husband have talked about. If we were to rent a home out, he has no desire to be a landlord type of person. So if we ever were in that situation, we'd probably hire a property management company, or we would end up just probably selling the home.
And you have to do the math also to see if it's worth it. I mean, you obviously ideally want to be cash flow positive once you pay all your things and you pay your property manager. So you have to do a little bit of math there to see if the money is worth what you can gain in the mid to long term versus the energy that you have to spend with it.
Absolutely. So a question that everybody is asking is, will this current housing market continue, or will there be a point this coming summer or this year anytime soon when sellers may miss out on getting at or above their asking price, and it becomes the buyer's market instead?
That is such a great question. And the crystal ball, right? So there are a couple of things right now that are driving this being a seller's market and has. I mean, and the primary thing is the low inventory. So
Mm-hmm.
like every market is different. Yesterday we were looking at numbers, and in San Diego we were at about 1,432 houses that were on the market, including condos and single family home. On a healthy, well balanced, not a buyer's market, just a healthy, balanced market, we should get about 7,000 homes of inventory. So there's such a discrepancy of where we are, which leads us to very likely remaining a very strong seller's market for a while. Obviously, the interest rates are starting to inch up, which will slow
Mm-hmm.
down a little bit. I think what we're seeing a little bit, but it's kind of picked up again, is that not as many offers coming in. So instead of having 35, you might have 15. So it's still really, the power is in the hand of the seller right now. I think, what we see is the seasonality. There's definitely the spring fling, spring fever kind of going on. And
Mm-hmm.
again, you've got that window between March and July where it's the spring is in the air. And again, you have that factor when it's families where they want to make sure that the kids are situated for the next school year. So that's your hottest window right now, but you also have more buyers, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
when you're the seller. So you'll have more options there. And it slows down a little bit in the fall and just before the holidays, but because again there's been so little inventory and the interest rates have been incredibly low, we had a very, very active fall and Christmas season here. So I don't foresee, and again, I don't have the crystal ball, but there is no prediction right now that in the next couple of months the market will become a buyer's market. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, like just in our case, when you have to go from 1,400 units to 7,000, that takes years to build up to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I know some people, I've been talking to some of my friends, they're just like, I hope it crashes so I can get like this giant home for like $3. And, those of us that are looking at our next home, it's a little wish that we all have that is just, everyone's kind of wondering, when do we hit that point where it starts to tip and starts to turn
Mhm.
a
Yeah, I think
little
it's going
bit.
to be
So,
I think, a slow progression as the interest rates start going up
mm-hmm.
and the inventory start going up. You'll get more of an equilibrium coming up, probably over the
Mm-hmm.
next, year or so. And everybody's hoping for that crash when you're the buyer, right? And they go back to 2008, 2009, where the fundamentals were very different from an economic standpoint, which
Mm-hmm.
led us to that crash. So we're not seeing that right now. So every market is different. I mean, we have increases here on the West Coast of 20% for the past couple of
Yeah.
years. They're predicting closer to 5 to 6% right now, but they're not
Mm-hmm.
projecting any crashes. But again, every market is different. So I think it's important to sit down with your realtor and ask him or her to pull the data from the past 12 months and looking month by month, how long things have been sitting on the market, average length of time on the market, how much above asking price it sells for, because
Mm-hmm.
very little sells for under listing price right now.
Yeah.
It can be 2% higher. Some places it's 7% higher. So they're able to pull all that data for you. Then you can make an educated price, listing price after that for your property.
Yeah. And for military families, I've seen the conversation happen in a lot of the spouse groups too, when people are asking about homes and what the local markets are like in different places. That for some families, I mean, we receive our BAH, our housing allowance, and we try to base getting a house on that. And we've been seeing a lot of folks also, uh, spending above that on a house just because of what the market is and what the inventory is like. And so it's been definitely a big conversation in our house of how much over BAH are we willing to go to
Mhm.
get the house that meets our needs. And so it might be for somebody that's looking at buying coming up, that you may need to stretch your budget a little bit, or you may need to be comfortable with a smaller house just because of what's happening out there.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah. So we're definitely going to have you back on. I want to do another big show about buying a house and what buyers need to know so we can cover all of that too. But
Yes.
I appreciate you giving us your time this
Mhm.
morning and joining us early there on the West Coast today.
Yes, I'm very happy to be part of this process. It's an interesting thing. It's a very emotional process, as we talked about, when
Yeah.
you move and relocate. So that's the part for me that is so rewarding, is to kind of help people make that transition and move on to another stage of their lives.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. And again, thank you for joining us this morning. For everybody else that tuned in and is watching, thank you for joining us as well. And join us again next week. We'll be back with another episode talking about everything you need to know PCS wise for upcoming season. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.